Okay, hi everyone. So I think we'll just get started with the seminar. So first and foremost, I just wanted to welcome everyone to the Ngo Sun Selective Webinar Series. So this will be our very first webinar in a series of multiple webinars that we'll hold over the next few months. So we'll have webinars on things such as changes to the online selective test, how to choose selective schools for your children once it's application time, and then closer to the exam day, just how to or what to expect on the day closer to the examination. So as many of you guys may know, selective has been changing quite a bit, especially over the last few years, and this year is no exception. So we just really wanted a way to connect with our students and our parents to ensure everyone is on the same page about selective. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the very first one, which is just an overview of the selective exam. We know that we might have some parents who are very familiar with selective already, and you've had students go through this process. We know that some parents, this might be your very first time dealing with selective. So we just want to cover everything, make sure everyone's on the same page, and then at the end, we can also go through questions of anything you might have. I'm extremely excited for tonight. We have a really good panel. So we have the principal of Ngo Sons, Dr. Trung Ngo. We've taken a lot of our very good teachers and our senior selective teachers, and as well as some people who are working at the department, just to give you a really strong overview of what happens in the selective and how you can best approach it. So before we go into all of that, let me just go through some housekeeping with you. So if possible, we would absolutely love it if you're able to turn on your camera. The staff here at Ngo Sons are really excited to get to know you and just to get to know you and your child. So if we're able to form that connection, we would love that. During the presentations, each of our speakers will speak for a period of time. We just kindly ask that you mute your microphone during the presentations. And then towards the end, when we're asking questions or answering questions, then you're more than welcome to unmute and just ask your question through there. Like I said, at the end, we'll have a Q&A for parents to answer any questions you may have. If you think of a question, you can just leave it in the chat and then towards the end, we'll answer it. Or like I said before, you can just unmute at the end and then we'll talk through your questions and we'll get someone to answer it. So with all that out of the way, let's see what's happening tonight. So tonight, our agenda, we're going to start off with a principal's address that will be done by Dr. Trung Ngo. Then I will go through quickly what is selective, why is it important, the different components of the application process, and what you need to know there. Then we have Mr. Jaden Ewan, who will go through the actual components of the selective exam. So he will talk through the 4 different subjects, what's tested in exams, what's not tested in exams, as well as what exam components your child needs to learn prior to May of next year. Then we have Dominic, who's going to be talking about the changes to the online exam format. So as many of you guys may know, the selective has now moved online and it's been confirmed for all students of this cohort that you were doing the exam online. So Dominic will speak a bit more about that, the differences on online examinations and paper-based examinations. Then we have Miss Amy Luong, who will go through the selective course, so what we offer at NSPC and the services we have there. And then finally, we'll end on the specialist program. And the specialist program is a program that we recently introduced 2 years ago. And it's designed for the students who are really excelling, and we'll get Miss Yolanda to talk about that when it comes to her time. So with all that in mind, we'll get started with the first agenda item, which is the principal's address. So I want to introduce to you Dr. Trung Ngo. So Dr. Trung is actually the principal and owner of Ngo Sons Academic Coaching. He's a medical practitioner by trade, and he's had over 30 years of experience teaching, mentoring, inspiring students. Over the last 30 years, he's trained well over 3,000 students, and I used to be one of his students, and I've learned a great deal and amount from him. And many of his students have gone to achieve great things, such as 99.95 ATARs and state ranks in the HSC. So without further ado, I'll share the screen, and Dr. Trung, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Justin. You keep saying 30 years. It makes me feel old. Okay, so I hope everyone's keeping warm. It's such a cold evening today. I'd like to welcome all parents to our seminar today. I'd like to also thank our presenters who've actually made the time to come on and share the experiences. And in particular, I'd like to thank Dr. Justin Ewan for organizing this event. As Justin stated, my name's Trung Ngo, and I've been the principal of Ngo and Sons since 1996. I've been involved in educating students for a very long time now, both primary and high school. I've also, unfortunately or fortunately, have had the painful experience of guiding three mischievous boys through primary school. One is now in university. The other two are still going through high school. One's actually sitting his HSC this year. Now, as parents, we always want the best for our children, and the job of being a good parent is it's very difficult. So tonight, I'm going to take off my hat, my teacher's hat, and probably put on my parenting hat. And I'd like to share my experiences with you and raise a few questions, or hopefully answer a few questions that you may have. I guess the first thing, I'd like to talk about is how do I get my child to focus? We've all experienced our children sitting down at the table, preparing to study with their favorite toy next to them, and instead of doing maths or reading, they're playing with the toy or coloring pictures. And I don't know about other parents, but with my boys, they would look at the floor and stare at dust particles. And then 2 minutes later, they're lying flat on the floor pretending to swim. And then it takes another 10 minutes arguing. And finally, I get them to sit back on the chairs and when we're about to study, they say, "Dad, I'm hungry." So concentration and being able to focus, I feel, is a skill. And because it's a skill, children have to practice this skill every day to actually be good at it. For me, to improve my children's concentration, I had a plan. So the first thing I did was I would set up study sessions. Initially, it would go 10 minutes, then we'll go 20 minutes, and we'll actually slowly stretch this period of time as they mature, as they get better. And as they got better, we then started to focus on how much work they were able to do in that period of time. I would always encourage them to do the most difficult things first. And for my boys, the hardest thing was about writing. They really struggled with that. And that's what I asked them to do first. I would also make sure that I'll get my boys to study in a boring but a well-lit room with very minimal distractions. I'll actually get them to face a wall. Now, every parent should be setting their year 5 children a goal of, I would say, 40-minute study sessions. If they can actually focus for 40 minutes, then you're actually doing well. The other thing I want to touch base on is that I found it hard, or I found it made it easy for me, was to teach the children responsibility. And by teaching them responsibility, this will improve their self-discipline. So from a parent's perspective, if your child is responsible, they do their work with minimal reminder, it will actually save you a lot of time. So how do we teach responsibility? The way I approached it was I got my boys to do as many housework as possible. So, for example, I'll teach my boys to wipe the table, set the table up before eating, and after each meal, I'll get them to pack the table up, empty the bins, vacuum the floor, and it was done together, so that the boys would know that each had a responsibility. And I would explain to them, if one person does it wrong or does it slow, then it would mean one of the other brothers would have to do it. So my children were very into sport, and I would use the concept of teamwork to show them that responsibility doesn't just occur in soccer, but it also occurs at home as well. So, and the other issue is, as part of teaching responsibility, I think it's very important to teach kids not to blame. So with my children, if they perform poorly in an exam, I would teach them never to blame the teacher. If they didn't play well in a soccer game, never blame the coach and never blame their teammates. I would tell them to hold themselves accountable for their results. So and as parents, we need to be a good role model as well. And we need to make sure that we don't blame other people. So that brings me back to the point where parents need to realize that students spend 3 hours tutoring, and the rest of the time they're at home. So for parents to get the best results, students need to really study effectively at home. And it's our role as parents to make sure that this happens. The other thing that I struggled with, and I still do, is technology. And I think that we all worry about this with our children. Now, using technology such as the computer, the iPad, or the phone can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. So using technology at the wrong time is bad. And I see too many kids carrying phones everywhere they go instead of eating with their family and contributing in conversations. They're busy on their iPad or they're busy on their phone. But what I want to say to parents is that we cannot escape technology. Now, unfortunately, the selective school test will now be done on the computer. And this means that kids need to know how to use the computer. They need to be familiar with reading on the computer and also know how to type quickly. And this is extremely difficult for primary school students. So at NSPC, we've made sure that our students are familiar with the computer. We've actually been able to create an online learning platform, and I'm quite sure that Dominic will be talking about this later in this talk. But without this platform, or without being able to use the computer, your child will not be successful in the exam. But again, it's our job as parents to make sure that any use of the computer should really be related to studying purposes. And finally, the next thing I want to address is, I guess a lot of parents ask me about choosing the right school for your child. So my children, but basically, the choices that we have are public schools, private schools, and selective school. Two of my children went to the local primary school, and one went to a private school. So after they all sat their selective school result, the eldest one went to Sydney Boys, the second one went to Sydney Grammar, and the third one was offered a position at Sydney Grammar, but his mum and I decided to keep him at the King School. Now, the school that I chose for my boys really depended on their attitude, and also the amount of time we were able to commit for each child. Now, first of all, I want to talk about selective school. Now, attending a selective school allows your child to study with like-minded students. Now, since the students have better academic abilities, the teachers will tailor the course to a high level. And by doing harder work, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, your child will obviously perform better. But I don't think that parents consider this, but the most important aspect of attending a top ranking selected school is actually something called scaling. And I'm quite sure that we'll talk to you about scaling either in this seminar or in future seminar, but that's a very important concept. So basically, if your child goes to, say, James Roos, even if their ability is low, their marks will be raised because of the school they attend. So instead of getting 90%, they will get 96% because their school did really well. So often, and I think that's a key factor. Now, often parents worry about selective schools being too competitive, and I admit there are one or two selective schools that are extremely competitive, and parents worry that their child might lose confidence. But this, it does happen, but from my experience, it's extremely rare. And if anything, attending a selective school improves a child's confidence. Now, on the other hand, you have the private school, and the private schools are good because they provide a holistic approach to your child's education. The reason why I kept my third son at a private school was because of this very reason. After a year at the King School, he had improved his communication, his confidence grew, and he developed this loyalty to his school, which in a way turned a somewhat irresponsible child into someone who took pride in the uniform and became more adult-like. So the disadvantage of private school is that unfortunately the sporting commitments are huge. The school expects every child to participate in not only participate but also watch sports every Sunday and train 2 days a week. And this actually goes until the end of year 12, and it may, and I feel it does actually get in the way of studying. So every child and family circumstances are different. I really encourage parents to research about the differences between the public school system, the private school system, and the selective school. Look at your child's strong points. Look at the traveling time that you may have to do, and also obviously look at the cost that is involved in going to these private school. And this will allow you to make an informed decision. So it's an important time. Year 5, year 6 is a very important time for your child, and it's important that you make the correct decision. And basically, I just like to wish everyone luck. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have and that I may provide an answer to at the end of this seminar. Just just give me any questions that you'd like me to answer. So Justin, back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Chung. So like Dr. Chung said, if anyone has any questions throughout the seminar, feel free to put it in the chat after each of the speakers. And then at the very end of the seminar, we'll go through the parent Q&A. So with that in mind, let's move on to the next section. So this section, I'm going to be talking about what selective actually is. So like I said, I know that we have varying levels of comfortability with this topic. So some parents have had maybe multiple children go through. Some parents, this might be your first time going through the selective process. So we just wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page and understood what selective was prior to breaking it down into the different components. So let's get started. So first of all, what is selective? So the selective exam is to get into a selective high school, and that caters for academically gifted students, and it lasts from year 7 to year 12. Now, there's many different ways you can get into a selective school. However, the main way is to do the selective exam and then get an entry point in year 7. So if you don't get it through this selective round and your child, for whatever reason, was unfortunate not to get a position, there are different ways to get into selective. However, we have found that the easiest way and the most secure way is to get them ready now and get them ready to do it in year 6. When you get to year 8, year 9, and you want to apply to a different selective school, it is quite hard because one, your child has already built so many relationships with their friends and their peers, and moving them to a different school might actually detract from the HSC, and their mental state might actually make it worse for them for the HSC. They also take less students as the years go on. So year 7 is where they take the most students. Then they take it up to year 11. And by then they might only take 1 or 2 students per year. So even though we always say to students that there is multiple opportunities to get into a selective school, now that we still have over a year till, or not over a year, about 10 months till the selective exam, it's really important to start focusing on it now, because the longer you wait and the later you wait for your child to get into selective school, the harder it gets. So that's why we want to get this webinar bright and early so everyone knows what's involved and what we can be doing to help your child. Now, like I said, in order to sit the selective, you must submit an application, and then you sit the selective high school placement test. And if you do well on that test, and we'll go through the criteria and we'll go through the weighting of each exam in a moment. But if you do well on that test, then you can get a position in that school. Now, one thing I want to point out about selective is every single year it's getting harder to get in. So if you take a look at last year, there were approximately 18,500 applicants and only 4,248 positions offered. So that means less than 1/4 of people actually get into selective schools. And that's a really important thing to note, that it is getting much harder to get in. Compare this with the previous year, so 2022, there was about 17,000 applicants, and they had the exact same number of positions. Same thing with 2021, it was 15,000, and again, same number of positions. So you can see that as the years go on, more and more people are getting interested in selective. However, they aren't increasing the number of positions. So it's extremely important that we get students practicing early, developing good habits early, like Dr. Chung was talking about, so we can really maximize their chance into getting into selective. So moving on from here, what are the actual different types of schools? So in total, there are 3 types of selective schools that are offered by this exam. So the first one is a fully selective school, and there's 17 schools in that category. Fully selective schools means that every single student within that high school is a selective student. And in order to make it into a position into that school, you must have passed the selective exam. Then you have something called a partially selective school, and this is what the bulk of all schools are. There's 26 schools here, and partially selective schools are schools that have 2 different streams. You'll have a community stream where it's just students from the local area, and you'll have a selective stream, which are the students who got an application through the selective pathway and going through the exam. And the main thing to note here is the difference between a fully selective school and a partially selective school is that a partially selective school, most of them only hold their selective stream until year 10. And then year 11 and year 12 is when they jumble all together, and all students are separated based on their school choices, or their subject choices rather. So important distinction. And one of the things that Dr. Chung talked about is scaling. And this is a very, very important thing for scaling. So we won't go through too much about what scaling is in this particular seminar. That's something later, and it's very far, but it's important for the HSC. But when you have a group of students who are all selective students and they're all working hard at that high academic ability, their average mark will get scaled up more than if you do a partially selective school, where you are mixed with a combination of selective students and community students. The last one is agricultural schools. So some of you guys may know James Roos, which is the #1 school over the last decade, multiple decades. Holston, these are agricultural schools. And all this means is that all students will be asked to do some form of agricultural component. But yeah, all these are the different types of selective schools. And again, like Dr. Chung said, it's very important to just work out based on your child's personality, which school best suits them. And I always tell this to my students that it's very important to actually research into the school. Some students, if they went to James Roos compared to, for example, even Holston, they might get 2 different results. So we have some students who, because their personality is more matched to what Holston offers, if you put them into a school like James Roos and their personality does not match that school, it would actually be detrimental or actually hurt their chances in the HSC. So lots of different schools, lots of different research. And as we go through this webinar series, and we have the next one, which is about on-school options, start to think and start to explore what personality your child has and what school options would be best for them. So next thing I also wanted to talk about is something they actually introduced recently in the last few years, which is the equity placement model. So prior to all the changes to selective, in 2018, they actually had a study, or they had a commission into the selective exam. And basically what that involved was them taking a look at the exam and thinking, how can we make this better? Or what are the issues with the exam? And one of the issues that they identified was that the top students, or the students who were from higher socioeconomic backgrounds, were able to get into selective schools. And there were a lot of groups of people who were disadvantaged and didn't have the same chance of getting in. So what they introduced based on that 2018 review was this equity placement model, where they dedicate a number of positions in each school. which is dedicated to a specific group of people. So for example, in the table here, you can see that students from a low socio-educational background will get 10% of positions in every school. Indigenous and Aboriginal students will get 5%. Rural and remote community students will get 2.5%. And students who have disability will get 2.5%. And even though this is a great thing overall and it's giving great opportunity to disadvantaged groups, the main thing to take away from this is it's even harder to get into selective school now. When back in before this model was taken in place, you had 100% of the positions that you were fighting for. Now take that 20% away and you are now fighting same amount of positions, they haven't increased positions, but for 80% of spots in that school. So again, I think selective, it's getting harder and harder. You have more applicants every year. You only have 80% of the positions that you used to have, but if you don't fall into this model. So selective is actually getting harder to get into. So getting prepared early, starting selective training now, even though it feels like it's about 10 months away, it's really important. And that's what we want to try and do and support you throughout these webinar series as well. So quickly taking through a look at the timeline on how selective has changed. So in 2020, so 2020 was when the original model was had, and you had things such as mathematics, general ability, reading, and writing. Then in 2021 was when the big change happened. It was after the review, they took a look at everything and they decided to make a very big change. And the main change that occurred in that year was general ability was taken out and thinking skills was added in. And then reading examinations and writing examinations just had extra components added to them. In 2022, school marks were then no longer considered. What they noticed that was after the COVID period, some schools were very good at the online learning. Some schools weren't as prepared. And because of that, their school marks varied quite a bit. So in order to make it fair across the board, what the selective department decided to do was just no longer take school marks and they only take the examination marks on the day. This might change. However, for this year, they haven't said anything yet. So it's most likely that from now on, school marks will no longer be considered and the examination is the important thing. And again, this just adds to the importance of getting your child ready for that day because it's that day and it's over. Then in 2023, what happened was they started thinking about introducing online exams. It was actually meant to start in 2023. However, they had some issues and they decided to push it back. And then now it takes us to now in 2024, where they released information about the actual exam. And they also have confirmed that online examination will be the method moving forward. And like Dr. Chung said, being online in general can be a very scary thing, but I think it's very important that parents start to accept that now, embrace it now, because the future and what it's looking like for high school, for university, and even further in career is online is here and it's going to stay. So I know that I talk to lots of parents and one of the main concerns that we always get is, oh, my child's always online. I don't know what's happening online. I don't know if they're actually doing their work or they might be playing games. And yes, that's 100% true. But unfortunately, just with the way everything has been structured now, everything is going to be moving online. So I think it's really important that we start having an open and honest conversation about how we can mitigate the risk and then also reap the benefits of what online can do. So those are the overall changes. And the last thing I'm just going to do, and I think it's an important slide if you don't have this information down already, it's just the key dates for what's going to be happening throughout the selective. So from the 7th of November of this year to the 21st of February next year, that is when the applications open. During that time, we will have another webinar on school choices and which schools are best. And we'll have some speakers from different schools to talk to you about the school environment. But make sure that during this time you come in, watch that seminar and just match your personality or your kid's personality with the school that would best suit them. Then the test is now going to be run from the 2nd to the 4th of May. Dominic will be speaking more about this, but the exam is actually going to be held on multiple days now, and students will be assigned one of the 3 days. 19th of May is the makeup test. So if your child does have any illnesses or misadventures, you can put in a request and then do the makeup exam on the 19th. Somewhere in term 3 of next year is when you get your offers and outcomes. And then in 2026, when then year 7, that's when they start the actual selective school and selective course. So with all that, that is pretty much what selective is. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go on to the different speakers and they're going to share more information on the actual nitty gritty, what components are in the exam, what classes we have, online testing. So we'll get started with that. And the first one is from Mr. Jaden Nguyen. So a little bit about Jaden. So Jaden actually currently is studying in Perth with getting his Doctor of Dental Medicine degree. Prior to that, he actually taught selective for over 5 years. And during that time had over 300 students get into New South Wales Selective School. Over the past few years, some of you may have had him, parents have been asking for information from him and been really seeking his expertise and experience. So we're just very, very fortunate that Jaden has been able to take time from his time in Perth and his studies to be able to share some insights with us. So what I'll do is I'll pass it on to Jaden. Are you there? Yes, perfect.
Okay, hi everyone. So, thank you, Justin, so much for that introduction. So, yeah, so I've taught selective for a while, 5 years, as Justin said. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm working a little bit in the background with the tutors and also the team. I find that selective is just so important, and having the support to build the skills, the stamina, as well as the strategies and the confidence in our students is critical, and it's key to achieving a good selective result. That's why, even though I am in Perth right now, I still wanted to maintain a close relationship with NSPC and also the students and the parents as well. So first, what we're going to talk about is the different components that are inside the selective test. So here we have 4 different tests that students need to sit when they are doing the selective test. So these 4 exams are the reading comprehension, writing, mathematical reasoning, and thinking skills. And on the right, you can see that with these 4 exams, they're not split really evenly in how they consider your final mark. So even though there are 4 different exams, reading comprehension and mathematics are weighted a quarter each. But we can see here that with writing, it is weighted less at only 15%, and thinking skills is weighted a bit more at 35%. So what I'm going to go through a little bit later is a little bit about the different components as to what is in each of these 4 exams. But overall, what we can see with NESA, so our New South Wales Education Authority, is that they are looking to reward students in thinking skills a little bit more, because they want to test the students' ability to look into critical thinking, problem solving, and also their ability to look at problems in different perspectives. So first, I want to go through a bit more about the reading comprehension text. So with reading comprehension, students are given 40 minutes to answer 30 multiple choice questions. These 30 multiple choice questions consist of 4 different answer options. And what students are going to be given is a whole bunch of different texts, and then they will need to answer different questions based on these texts. So what I've looked into in my time teaching selective, and also just looked at general feedback from the students and looking at all the different past exams and material that has been released, is we can see that the reading comprehension is structured in a way such that students are going to be dealing with 4 different texts. So let's go through each of the 4 one by one. The first text that they are going to be given is going to be either an adolescent fiction text, or they are going to be given 2 linked extracts. So an adolescent fiction text is just when one that targets students usually in their later years of primary school or the earlier years of high school. And what it looks at is about finding your identity, looking at relationships, or looking at things like peer pressure or just general growth and development. So those are what adolescent fiction are. And with the two linked extracts, they're going to have basically two slightly shorter texts, but it's another skill where students are now not just reading and answering questions based off of one text, but are now looking to compare and contrast and find meaning and information from both of those texts and combine that into one. The second text that they are given is a poem. So they are going to look at, I guess, another form of text, one where they may not have a lot of experience in before, but what we are going to do is help the students to become more familiar and more comfortable with this usually foreign sort of text for many students. For part C, or the third type of text, they are either going to receive a summary phrase or a closed passage. So this is going to be, or for a summary phrase, it's a paragraph and they are either going to have to summarize it or provide a suitable title or subheading. And then for the closed passage text, they are going to be given one big text with missing sentences inside of it. And their job is to use the context clues as well as what they've learnt in the structure or the plot of the text in order to fill in those missing gaps. And the last one is an extract-based text. So this is where students will be given 4 passages, and these passages are related in some way, shape, or form. So for example, they could all share the same theme, they could all share the same message, they all could share the same genre, or they could all share the same setting, and then students are to work through and compare those different texts. Okay, so next I want to talk about mathematical reasoning. So for mathematical reasoning, this is the second exam that students need to do. It is going to be 40 minutes, and there are going to be 35 multiple choice questions. In this test, what NESA has done is they've given students all 5 answer options, where one of them is going to be correct. Now, what this does mean, even though we might think, oh, general multiple choice questions have 4, like what difference does the 5th one make? What that does mean is that it limits students' ability to sort of guess the right answer if they are running out of time, for instance. So it becomes increasingly more important to be able to structure the exam well, see which questions students should answer first, and develop that exam plan to get through as many or all of those questions during the allocated time. Okay, so for the next one, I want to look at the mathematics content. So here at NSPC, we only teach students what is necessary. So I've got a lot of feedback from students and parents who had previously attended other tutoring centres and then came over to us, and they talk about how they are presented with maths content that's very overcomplicated, or it's just generally very hard. And sometimes with these hard and overcomplicated concepts, it can feel very demotivating or demoralizing for our students as well. So what I've done is I've taken a look into all the different tests that we were given. And what we find is that there are topics that are tested, and there are topics that haven't been tested in the entirety of selective. So what I have at the top is the different sort of topics that are tested. So numbers, fractions, measurements, geometry, data interpretation, chance probability, some random ones and decimals as well. And we find that there are certain topics like percentages or volumes that are just never tested in selective at all. So what we aim to do here at Noah & Sons is to help students with their time management skills, with their deconstruction skills, to take all these different topics from the questions and break it down into more easier, understandable concepts, and really help them to form their own game plan. With mathematical reasoning, a lot of it is problem solving based, but the topics itself are not very, very hard to grasp. So we make sure that all the students have a good foundation of the topics that are tested, and then we focus on increasing their speed and being able to solve the question from start to finish, from everything that they're given to the result at the end. All right, so let's move on to thinking skills. So for thinking skills, it's 40 minutes, 40 multiple choice questions. There's going to be 4 answer options for each one. So A, B, C, or D, where one of them is correct. And this one tests the student's ability to think critically and to solve different types of questions that either deal with numeracy, verbal, or just understanding different shapes or understanding different 3D objects in space. Okay, so for thinking skills, what we've been able to retrieve from NESA is that they've broken down thinking skills into different subtopics. So you may either need to identify similarities, find procedures, evaluate some evidence, evaluate some reasoning, evaluate mistakes, or undergo some sort of logical analysis. So there's a little bit of a summary there. And what we've done here is we've been able to take all the different sort of advice, or taken all the different question types from NESA. And what we've done is we've able to subdivide them into different question types. So again, with the feedback that we got from some of our parents, a lot of students from other tutoring centers are just given questions upon questions upon questions. But what we do differently here at NSPC is we take all those different questions. We show students how do we identify what type of question we are dealing with. And then we take those different questions, as well as the strategies, as well as the advice, the tips, the tricks, in order to take that a step further and apply it to those different questions. So where we stand out and where we're a bit different is we not only give students the multitude of questions to practice, but we also add strategy into it. And that strategy is what is really important to make sure that we maximize our marks there. Okay, and then last is the writing. With writing, it's 30 minutes and students just have to write one type of text. And usually their job is to either provide information, so in other words, inform the reader, to persuade, to sort of get the reader to understand or to come over to their side, or to write a creative text where they put their own imagination onto the sheet of paper. With selective, where it is a bit different though, is that on top of being able to do those different things, they have to write them in a specific form as well. So for example, reports, narratives, or emails. So what I want to look at is, yes, the writing content. What we do here is we split it into 2 types. We ask students to first identify the text type. So in other words, this is the purpose. This is what students need to do. This is what students are aiming to do when they are writing this text. During primary school, a lot of students will go through the very basic general structure that achieves these sorts of things. But for the selective test, it takes it one step further. And what the selective test aims to do is to also test the students on writing in a specific text form. So this is the structure that they need to do. And what we find with the marking rubric for selective is that with these textual forms, there are dedicated marks to them. So just by understanding the form and what needs to go into, for example, an email or a letter or a newspaper article, students are able to get really crucial marks that helps boost their writing score up, that another student who isn't familiar with these different textual forms won't receive. Okay, and that's all from me. I'll hand that back to Justin and the speaker.
Thank you so much, Jaden. So yeah, that was just an overview on the selective components, and I just wanted to add a couple of things as we go through. So just taking a look at the selective exam, what I want to do is just compare it to what it was back in 2020. So if you take a look at the components now versus the components back in 2020, you'll see that they're actually drastically different. Even though the main components are the same, you still have mathematics, you still have reading, you still have writing. the main focus and what they're actually testing from students is very different compared to what it used to be. So for example, back in the old days when I was doing selective, if you're doing selective before 2020, reading comprehension was very simple. You get given a text, then you have a question with 4 answer options, and they just keep repeating it like that. But like what Jaden was saying with the actual format of the exam now, you can see that even in something like reading, they're introducing thinking skills to you. They're not just asking you questions on what's happening in your text or what do you think this person meant in this text. They're actually changing the way they're actually structuring the questions. So if you take a look here, you see that these 2 types of questions here are completely different format to anything you will see in any other exam. You won't see in NAPLAN, you won't see in high school. These are very specific to selective. And the skills that they're testing for these are also drastically different, but it mainly falls back to that thinking skills component where you're critically analyzing and forming information. Same thing with mathematical reasoning. The main difference between just mathematics, what it used to be, and mathematical reasoning is now in mathematical reasoning, they're going to give you a very large text. They're going to give you lots of information. Not all of it's going to be relevant, but they're going to ask your child to deconstruct and critically analyze. Again, bring in those thinking skills questions. When we teach mathematical reasoning, the tested topics here, they're actually not that hard. All the students by year 5 should have learned a majority, if not all of these by now. But what's difficult about the mathematical reasoning exam is the deconstruction that happens before. They're not going to ask you what they're used to, such as add 2 minutes and 30 seconds to 5:03 p.m. They're going to format it in a way, they're going to formulate some form of scenario, they're going to give you about a train or about some sort of timetable you need to follow. And it's that deconstruction which is really, really important. And of course, finally, the transition to thinking skills, all of this is about viewing the world in a different way, how you can play around and think outside the box. So I think the main thing to take away from here, if you had a child do selective in years past, or this is your first time having a child do selective, is to just really start thinking about how you can improve the sort of deconstruction and critical analysis in your child. So making sure that children nowadays, even if they're not doing work, asking them questions about why things happen. If you see something about a person and you have a conversation with a person and you see they're feeling a sort of way, ask your child, why do you think that person's feeling that way? Or if you go out and you see that the train timetable is set up in a certain manner, where they have breaks every 5 minutes or whatever it is, ask them, why do you think that train timetable is set in that way? And that why thing and that critical analysis part is really what's going to help students here. So main thing to take away from this is selective, more and more so, has been moving towards critical analysis. They're making it harder for students to just go in, read, and then do maths and do reading or do writing. But what students need to know first is how to break it down, how to analyze, and how to deconstruct. And those are skills that you can't learn overnight. It's something that has to start very early on. So what we really do encourage students and parents to do is start asking those questions, start probing students on the why of why things are happening, and that would really help them in that exam. So I just thought I'd add that part on, but thank you so much, Jaden, for your section. That's just an overview on the different components of selective. Next, we're going to talk about a very big change that's happening to the selective exam. So online exams has been happening for the last few years and it's getting more and more common. Previously, NAPLAN had changed to online and a majority of schools are now adopting the online NAPLAN. Selective and OC are both moving to online now. And just based on the trend that we're seeing, a lot of things, potentially even the HSC when they get into year 12, by the time they're sitting it, might also be online. So things to reiterate is getting accustomed to online and getting used to online is a very important thing that parents and students should be doing now. We'll try to support you as much as we can, and I'll let Dominic speak more about online learning, but it's really important to just get that in your mind now. So talking about online learning and the changes to the online exam, we have Dominic Huang. So Dominic is actually currently studying I think Bachelor of Engineering with honors from the University of New South Wales at the moment. He's been teaching selective for a number of years now. He had hundreds of students go in. Well, where Dominic really stands apart from the rest of the panel tonight is Dominic has had first-hand experience on building our online platform. So from the planning stages to the execution stages and now the reviewing stages, he's worked tirelessly to get this online learning platform to where it is. And it's finally at a stage where we're extremely happy, confident, and really just proud to present it, because we know the impact they can really have on students and how students can actually take away and get accustomed to this online. So what I'll do is I'll pass on to Dominic and he'll get you through the changes to the online exam.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yeah, so the main changes to the online examination, first of all, like from previous years, we've always had paper-based learning and paper-based examinations, but from next year on, it will be completely online. So students will actually have to come to a specific testing centre between the dates of 2 and 4 of May, and they'll be sitting the exam and actually just doing it on a computer. At the moment, we don't have too much information on the what specific changes, such as whether it will be a computer or a laptop yet, but we hope to get that information after the co-pilot test on the 22nd of June. And after that, we'll provide you with more information in another seminar. But from what we know, it's going to be an online, computer-based examination where students will come in, they'll sit with a device given to them by the centre, and then they'll be doing a version of the test depending on which day they come. So it will be a different one on each separate day, so that just minimises cheating and everything. So with the examination, it's going to have different branches, and there's going to be a lot of machine learning and other things that are integrated with the actual testing process. So for example, if a student does really well in the first section, the computer will be able to analyze that, and then they'll move that student into a branch that is harder if they did well, or easier if they didn't do so well. So yeah, those are the types of changes that are happening at the moment, and they will release some computer-based practice exams. So the differences between paper-based and online at the moment, students need to be able to learn how to type quickly without errors, and they need to be able to type without slang or abbreviations, so a more formal tone. So that's regarding the writing section. We've found that a lot of students don't know how to type very quickly. So that's another skill that we have to build with them. So things like touch typing, they'll have to type very quickly. And yeah, we find that they tend to write a lot quicker compared to typing. So that's something we want to encourage. Students also have to learn how to navigate the new examination platform, as well as their paper-based working out. So students, when they come in, they sit down at a computer, all the questions will be on the screen, but they'll be given one blank A4 sheet of paper and a pencil, and they'll be able to write their working out there. Now, traditionally, we will be able to read off of the paper and annotate the questions, whereas now students will have to look from a computer and kind of translate that into working out on their piece of paper. And that it wastes a lot of time, because students will have to look up and down, and they might get disorientated and not know where they're up to. And yeah, currently we're not sure about how the actual exam is formatted. So students will also need to be able to take note of which questions they have and haven't done, and which questions they want to flag. And yeah, we'll get some more information on that. But at the moment, we understand that students won't be able to highlight and annotate the same way. Yeah. Okay, so tips to improve online. The main thing is just the practice. So our online learning platform at the moment definitely does that. So we have all our examinations, we have a copy online so students can come home and practice. And the main thing is just being able to navigate the software, as well as being able to type quickly. So we recommend that students learn to type on things like TypeRacer or Monkey Type, or other platforms that allow them to type with punctuation, capital letters, be able to practice and type quickly and practice that. We also know that the blank piece of paper is just going to have no boxes or anything. From what we understand, it's going to be completely blank. students will come in, they'll have to learn how to format their piece of paper. Because, for example, they have this one piece of paper that they need to keep for the exam. They're not going to be able to keep multiple sheets. So they'll just have that one piece of paper to do all the questions working out on. So they need to understand how to space it out and not waste the space, so that they have all the extra space to do other questions. They also need to understand what questions they should skip and which questions are worthwhile completing. So one thing that I do is when I teach, I always say that if the student can't get the question straight away, they need to move on, especially in thinking skills and in reading. They need to move quickly through the exam. So yeah. Yep, so now we're just going to play a video about the OLP that we've been working on, so the online learning platform. So this just takes us through all the features and everything that we have.
Welcome to NSPC Online. Our new learning platform has been designed to support your child's educational journey, giving them confidence to navigate the school's evolving curriculum and technology landscape. NSPC Online can be accessed by visiting our website. We suggest you bookmark this page for quick future access. Log in using the unique username and password provided during enrollment. Upon successful login, you will land on your homepage. Here you have access to all the courses your child has been enrolled in. Here you can access class materials. Submitting homework and quizzes has never been easier. Click on the required link, which will take you to the relevant page. Once your child has completed quiz or homework, you will instantly receive a feedback report detailing their performance, along with comprehensive work solutions. This link here gives your child the option to upload their homework for marking if required. Lesson recordings are also available for revision. Here you will find the Zoom link for online classes and homework sessions if your child is unable to attend class in person or needs to attend a makeup lesson. If you have any questions or queries, please reach out to one of our friendly staff who will be more than happy to help. We hope you and your child enjoy using NSPC Online.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Dominic, for sharing that. And like Dominic said, it's very early stages. The department hasn't released much information. That being said, there is going to be a pilot testing program where students come in and they actually test the computer and they test out the format. And once we get more information from that, we will have another webinar and we'll talk about specific things you can do in order to help your child do online testing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to our next speaker. So our next speaker is Miss Amy Luong. She's currently studying as well at the University of New South Wales, doing what I think is one of the hardest degrees, actuarial studies and computer science. Amy is actually one of our senior selective teachers, and she's been teaching for the last 4 years, teaching students from a whole wide range of levels. So she's taught at our Parramatta campus, she taught at our Fairfield campus, and she has lots of experience just going through getting students into selective. Most recently, Amy was actually involved in spearheading the revamp of our whole entire selective program. So she's really involved in the content development process, and she's very involved in understanding the different parts of selective. So just very grateful that she's here to share her experience with us today. So Amy, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you to Justin. Yeah, so I'll be going through our program, our selective training program, and just unpacking for you the aims of it, our lesson structures, and what exactly we do with the kids to support their performance in the exam. So the selective training program is really about building their examination skills and developing techniques to ace the selective exam. So that means our program focuses on understanding the theory behind the questions and developing an approach and a strategy for actually answering the question. So the theory is a really key and vital part of our program because we understand that providing a structured way of approaching question is really important for students, especially when they haven't come across a type of question before, and we find that's really important with thinking skills. So theory is an incredibly important part of our training program. So on top of the theory, we prioritize this theory, and as a result, our examinations are slightly shorter than the full length of the actual exam. However, the pacing of the exam is still the exact same as the real exam. So that means students will still be able to practice under the same exam conditions and practice their time management so that they are still familiar and comfortable with when they do the actual exam. On top of that, we provide them an opportunity to practice their online exam skills. So we have online examination practices that they do as homework, and we also provide them work solutions to look through at home as well. So those are the overall key objectives of our training program. And then I'll also go into the format and the structure of the program. So with there being 4 subjects in the selected test, we alternate between pairs of them. So in 1 week, we may dedicate it to mathematical reasoning and thinking skills. And then the next week, we'll dedicate it to reading comprehension and writing. The week after, we'll go back to mathematical reasoning and thinking skills, and then switch back to reading comprehension, writing, and so on and so forth. So that's how we structure our schedule. That's on a schedule basis. Now, in our actual lessons, our lesson structure, so for the 2 subjects, we'll split it equally in our 3-hour lesson. The structure for both subjects remains the same. So for one subject, we'll go through theory, our practice examination, and then review the examination and solutions together. So the theory part is the really most valuable part of our program. This is where we deconstruct a topic into the subcategory of that topic. So for example, in writing, 1 week we'll dedicate it to learning about how to write a letter. We'll deconstruct it with what is the purpose of a letter? What's the structure of a letter? What are the key language features of a letter? And then on top of that, we'll provide them with a good example of what a good piece of writing for a letter looks like. That way students have a more tangible goal and understand what they are trying to work towards. So that same idea is applied across all our other subjects as well. So after our theory, we have our, I'll go through an example of, on that slide, Justin, of what a typical theory booklet looks like. So the one you're seeing right now is an example of a thinking skills theory booklet. This one is on the subcategory of correct reasoning, and you can see that highlighted in green there. So each week is dedicated to a subcategory. So this one is correct reasoning. We explain what the question really looks like so they can identify it. And then we also give them a general approach of how to tackle that question. So what are the steps, clear and concise steps that they should be following in order to unpack the question, work it out themselves, and answer the question. And by giving them an approach, that means that they have a very ordered way of how to do a question. So whether or not it involves maybe harder numbers or a harder topic, they have a clear idea of what steps they need to follow. That way they're able to answer the question. We also provide them with key points to consider and a rationale behind the approach. So not just giving them the steps, but explaining to them why the steps are important. That way they understand why they need to start with step 1, how that helps them move towards step 2, step 3, and so on to get the final answer and reach the goal of the question. So that first page there, we dedicate to deconstructing the question and developing their understanding of it. And then we help them put it into practice. So we have a lot of guided examples that we go through with them in the class where we show them how we deconstruct it into each of the steps. After that, we also have some practice questions which they get to do themselves to practice what they've learned. And then after the theory, we have their practice examination. So it is 30 minutes. Again, it is slightly shorter because our focus is on deconstructing the question and explaining to them how to do the question and understanding it. The opportunity for them to further practice comes with their homework, where they get an online examination to practice, as well as they have access to the exam that they sat in person to redo again online. So that's the opportunity for them to practice. In the class, we focus on understanding the question and how to do it. After they sit their exam, we dedicate the last part of the lesson to reviewing the exam together. So going through the solutions for the exams. If students particularly struggled in a certain question, we dedicate that time to help them with that and further their understanding so that they can learn from mistakes they made or strengthen their understanding. So yeah, that theory, exam, solution structure is repeated for both subjects. So on top of just our lesson, we do have a lot of other perks that we have to support the students' learning. So as I said before, students have full access to the exams that they sat in class. They can redo it at home on our online learning platform. And we also provide them with work solutions as well, because there isn't really any point in them knowing if they got it wrong unless they can learn from their mistakes. So we provide them with work solutions as well. So we also have full lesson recordings on our online learning platform that serves as a way for them to make up lessons if they missed out on a week, or to just review the content. If they are weaker in a certain area, then they're encouraged to look back on that recording to reconsolidate what they are trying to learn. As well as the lesson recordings, we have, again, the examination practices online that helps them to mimic the new examination format online and build their online testing skills. On top of that, we also have weekly reporting. So at the end of the lesson, we give reports back to the students which outline their performance, where they rank against the rest of the cohort, as well as their percentage mark. So that's a way for us as teachers and also you as parents to keep an eye on their performance throughout the term. We also provide online revision videos to upskill the students in any areas that they may be a little bit weaker in. We understand, especially at the beginning, students come in at a lot of different skill levels, so we're there to support them with any other resources as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Amy. And I think the main reason why we wanted to share that, because we do know that a lot of the parents in this call today are actually our parents and students, parents or students who actually attend our classes. And we just wanted to make everyone aware of the different things that you can actually do throughout this course. So a lot of the time, students might not always tell parents there's online homework. They might not tell you that you can resit the exams at home. So just get a good understanding of what you can do with the online platform. And you can leverage that however you wish. So the last thing we're going to talk about today, and we've gotten a lot of questions and interest about this, is the specialist program, the selective specialist program. Now, this is a program that has been very, very dear to my heart, and it was something that I started 3 years ago in response to all the different changes that they made to the selective exam. Because what we noticed in the selective exam, especially with thinking skills, is that it's impossible to get every student 100% on top of all the concepts and ideas. And the reason behind that is because critical thinking and the ability to critically analyze isn't something that you can just learn in a classroom. It's something that needs to be ongoing. And like I said, by asking those why questions, by looking more into certain things and thinking outside the box. So we formed this specialist program on the back of that concept, and I've been teaching it for the last 3 years. And the thing that we really want to get out of this course is students who develop that approach. So you'll see as Yolanda goes through the course, how it's different to the normal course, how we start building those critical thinking skills, and how we actually start getting them to deconstruct and analyze. So with that in mind, let me introduce you our next speaker. So our next speaker is Miss Yolanda Lai. And we are very, very lucky to have Yolanda at Ngo & Sons. Yolanda has been teaching at primary schools. She's taught at Harrington Street Public School. She recently just taught at Smithfield Public School, and she has a very, very good understanding of how the school system works and how we can actually leverage the school system and what they do in primary school for high school. Prior to taking on the specialist course, so I won't be teaching the specialist course, but I'm so happy that Yelena is able to take the helm from me. Yelena was actually our resident OC teacher. And during that time, she trained hundreds of students into OC, which is no small feat because the number of students who actually get into OC is actually a lot smaller than the number of students who get into selective. And our most recent cohort, our year 6 students right now, out of the 15 students that are in Harrington Street Public School OC, 7 of them actually go to Nguyen Sons, and many of them went to the OC class with Yolanda. So we're very lucky to have her as our next specialist teacher, and I'll let her talk through the course and how your child can actually apply for the course.
Thanks, Justin. Hi, everyone. So I'll be going through the selective specialist course. So the reason why we designed the selective specialist course is to give students who are already excelling at the top of their grade, both at school and at Nguyen Sons, their best chance at getting into top selective schools such as James Roos, North Sydney Boys, Baulkham Hills. So in order for us to support students in doing that, the students who attend this specialist class are able to gain the skills and knowledge to complete the hardest 5% of questions that the selective exam has. So these are the higher order thinking questions that Justin was talking about that require more than just memorization or recalling facts or knowledge. And how Justin mentioned earlier about critical analysis being so prominent and embedded across thinking skills, mathematical reasoning, and reading comprehension now compared to the past selective exams prior to 2020. The reason why we don't offer this program, this course to students who aren't excelling is because we found that this can actually be counterproductive and it can overwhelm them with too much information and actually lower their overall mark. So in terms of the lesson structure, it's 2 hours a week. So 1 hour of classroom theory and question deconstruction, 20 minutes of a short competency quiz, and then 40 minutes of the review and theory upskilling. So compared to the normal selective class, we have 1 hour of theory per lesson so that we can really deconstruct the questions and how to solve them. So during this 1 hour, we break the questions down into fundamental concepts and get students to understand not only how something works, but why it works as well. So most week students will be tested with a short competency quiz. And because this class is capped, parents should expect that there's more communication during the term, and the students who are in this class are held to a higher standard and should be expected to be more self-motivated and driven being in this class as well. In this class, there's either a novel study or news of the week each week. So this is so that students can have an incentive to read chapters from a novel and answer difficult analytical questions, or study a news event that occurs throughout the week and then present it orally in front of the class. So this is to build their understanding and knowledge on world events and social issues that are in real time. And because the selective exam is centered on so many of these present issues and key thematic issues, students need to be accustomed to the reading and writing sections of the selective exams because they're a lot harder than what they were in the past. For the entrance requirements for this selective specialist program, in recent years, it has been very competitive, and we've had over 100 applicants, 100 students apply each year, but we only have 20 positions. Students are held to a higher standard and will be more strict with homework and their willingness to learn in class. So in order to attend this specialist program, students have to already be attending the selective training class. This is so that we can track their performance in their regular selective class and also in and so that they get examination practice on top of the specialist program. To be in this class, they must sit the selective school entrance exam with a minimum of 85%. If less than 20 students receive 85%, we won't lower the entrance mark. However, we'll actually take less students who are in this class, because we find that those who aren't ready for it will actually be a detriment to them, and we don't want that to happen. So the students who are in this class have to have the intrinsic motivation to want to excel and do well. So this is an example of the theory notes. So on the left side, we go through, we focus on an extension concept each week, and we deconstruct it. So you can see that we go through more complex concepts that are needed to fully understand a question. So in this specialist class, we focus on understanding why the idea or the strategy works, and we use diagrammatical representations to explain the strategies that we use. And this class really focuses on why a strategy used and why it should be used, rather than just feeding students the information on that specific strategy. We also emphasize deconstructing the question, breaking it down, and also time management skills as well, since they're only given one A4 paper during the exam, and they have to be able to use it efficiently and manage their time efficiently as well.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, for sharing that. And I just wanted to reiterate some things on the entrance requirements. So I've had a lot of parents ask me over the years that we've been running it, why don't you take more students, or why can't you open up a second class? And like Yolanda said, this class, if your child is not ready for it, or if your child doesn't want to have that willingness to learn, this class will actually be detrimental for them. And the reason why it is detrimental to them is because they're going to be developing critical thinking skills that aren't directly related to the selective, however, will help if they're already excelling in selective. We've seen this in some years past where I've had to ask students to step out of the class, or we've had to ask students to just go back and do the normal selective training program. And the reason for that is we in no way do want to do any harm to your child. But what we found with this program is if your child is already excelling in the selective exam, they're already getting good marks, and they're already getting about 95% of the questions that they are, this will get you that last 5% of questions, or the last 10% of questions. So even though the entrance requirements are quite strict, 85%, and like Yolanda said, if not more than 20 students get 85%, we'll just take less students. It's done there for a reason, it's done there for a purpose. So this program, we've been trying it and we've been fixing it over the last 3 years, and it's at a point that we're very happy. Just know that if you don't make it into this program, it doesn't mean that your child's not going to make it into top 5 schools. The other selective training program that Amy was talking about is enough, and you'll cover 95% of the questions. This is just to help those already excelling students almost get an edge up into getting into those schools. And that's what we try to aim to do with this program. So with that said, what we'll do is we'll go on to any final questions. So like I said, we're going to go through the questions that have been asked so far throughout the seminar. And then we're also going to ask parents, if you want to unmute and ask any more questions, you can. And then after that, we'll go through next steps from here. So we'll go through a couple of questions. So the first question we have here is from Ragavi Yarasi, and he asks, for students who cannot travel to Fairfield campus, do you run online sessions? Yes, we do. So we do run an online class, and you can get the similar experience online. What will happen after this meeting is we're going to send you an email with number one, the thinking skills toolkit and the practice examination that you get for attending this program, but also information about our classes and a link to sign up if you want to. So that will all be sent into your email. The next question that was asked was from Kajvi Bhati, and it says, do you need to purchase any extra textbooks, or do you have any recommended materials? And I might pass that one on to Dominic. Did you have anything to speak to that one?
Yeah, I would say that in previous years when the exam was paper-based, that was really important. So textbooks and things would have been really important. But now that the exam's online, I would actually recommend just practicing typing and all those other skills, so navigating the actual exam. So just practicing online is the main thing. There are a lot of online exam packages that you can buy, and we'll be releasing one at the end of the year. But yeah, I would say that just practicing online is the main thing at the moment. For the early stages now, since we're still about 10 months out, I would say that theory and understanding is the most important thing. But later down the track, maybe a term later, it would be mostly examination skills. So definitely practicing online is more important than getting textbooks, I would say. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Tom. The next question we have is from Shrey. So Shrey asks, how can we identify if our child has the potential to sit for OC or selective? Jaden, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of potential to sitting the selective, I think the first one is to look into where are the strengths and the weaknesses in terms of the different topics that we're in. And after joining the selective program that we have after a few weeks, even at the start, if it is the marks aren't where we hope the students to be, what we do want to see is that there is a gradual improvement in those marks. So everyone's going to come in with a different baseline. So for example, maybe after the first week or two, you see that the marks may be at 40 or 50, for example. But as long as we see them gradually go up, a couple of weeks later, 50, 60, 70, if it's going in the right direction, that's what we want to see. And the other one that I talked about before was just a little bit about motivation. So, the motivation to study, to want to go home, to practice those different exams, to go through the different materials and the different content, that goes a long way for the students. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Jaden. The next question we have was from Kajvi again. So how will parents be notified regarding homework and results? So I might answer this one. So when you do our courses for homework and results, this is actually something that we've talked a lot about our faculty, and we've discussed the best ways to actually get information across to our parents. And starting from this term, we've actually introduced a couple of things. So number one is we find that a lot of the time parents, they're not comfortable with online, and we want to make that transition as easy as possible. So we're going to start sending out emails for not only students who fail homework, but students who are not completing homework. So that is one way that you'll get information from our team. Our team are also going to start conducting just conversations with parents at the end of class. So any concerns that they have, they'll make sure to bring it up to you. But the best and easiest way is to actually just hop onto the online learning platform, go through the different exams, and you can see each of their results and see how they're performing in those exams. The next question is there an opportunity to make it into the specialist class if you do not pass the exam? Unfortunately for that one, we're unable to offer students past the start date. Like I said, for the purpose that this course, it's pretty holistic in how we structure it. It's been going through revamp after revamp after revamp until we're finally happy with it right now. And the way that the course is structured is if children join halfway or students join halfway through the exam, it's going to be difficult for them to catch up and understand because everything builds on from each other. What they're learning week 1, they'll need for week 2, and what they're learning week 2, they'll need for week 3. So unfortunately, at this stage, we're not going to be offering it if you don't make it in the initial stages. Lalitha has asked when is it conducted. So an email will be sent out when it's going to be conducted. It's going to be done at the start of next term in term 3, within weeks 1 and 2. All right, the next question we have here is from Cameron, and Cameron asks, how do you improve writing? And I might ask Amy to answer that.
Yeah, so I'm hoping a lot of you are familiar with the phrase that great writers are great readers and great readers are great writers. So our teaching team really support that idea. We find that students who read widely are really great writers, and the reason being they have seen great examples of writing. They're able to emulate that in their own writing. If they have seen good writing, they know what to achieve or what to work towards. So we always encourage them to read widely. Now, reading widely doesn't just constitute reading. Students should be reading good quality texts that are also challenging them and improving their vocabulary. So some texts that we recommend are Morris Gleitzman's Once Trilogy or Chinese Cinderella. I remember reading that in primary school. I enjoyed that as well. So texts like that are challenging to students and are good quality or higher level texts that we recommend. On top of improving writing, writing is a process of editing and continuing to improve. Writing can always be improved. So with that, it's really important that when students get feedback on their writing, they're paying attention to it and trying to take on that feedback. So what we try to do also is we provide a service where anything that students want to have marked or have feedback given on, they can email us with their piece of writing, whether that's maybe a school speech, some piece of writing they need to do for homework for school. And within about a week, we'll have comments and feedback emailed back to them. So taking on that feedback, using it to their advantage, that is another key way for them to improve on their writing.
Oh, thank you so much for your insights, Amy. Gautam Bendi asked, do we have an online selected trial test? So Dominic was speaking a bit to this, and later throughout the year, we do have plans to release online exam packages. Right now for online selective trial tests, they're embedded within our course. So if you do the course, you'll get access to all those online exams. But later throughout the year, we will open up packages and we'll start selling that. So we'll make sure to keep everyone posted in email when that happens. The next question is from Ragavi, and Ragavi asks, with your specialist program, is it possible to share the number of kids who made it to selective schools over the year? Yeah, so 100%. We don't have that on us right now, but when the email we're going to send, when we send you the Thinking Skills Toolkit, the examination, all that stuff, we will definitely share that, our last year's results as well with you. So I see Shrey here has her hand raised. Did you want to ask a question, Shrey?
Yes, so thank you very much for this seminar. It's very informative. I didn't grow up here, didn't know how school works, so it's a very good eye-opening experience for me. I have a bit of a questions with the kids, like some kids, they are very confident in math and they're doing really well. Then you look at the English side of it and he's not as confident or not as interested. And my son in particular, he's on an extreme end for one of another. Like Zachary, my son, he is quite accelerated in math. But then in English, he seems to be able to understand, memorize, but not able to apply. And that seems to be a consistent issue. And there's days when I feel like, oh, maybe he should apply for an OC. And then the next day I feel like, but how is your English doing? And then I'm quite unsure because he's not a well-round all across that it's being tested. So how do I deal with that kind of anxiety as a mom or help my child?
Yeah, 100%. And I'll give you a bit of an answer, and I might get Dr. Trung if you can also share some of your insights after as well. But what I think with kids is it's very natural, especially at this young age, to show one side they really like one subject, and on the other side they don't like the other subject as much, especially in boys. And I know your son Zachary, very gifted in mathematics, but writing is the one, or English is the one you're worried in. I would say the important thing is to just play for what he needs right now. So for the selective exam, like I said, mathematics is not actually very difficult. And the content that is tested isn't going to be overly complex. But what you need to know is that deconstruction and the time management skills. So if I were you, I would now focus more primarily on English. If you know his mathematics is already really strong and he's doing already year 6 work, there's not much point going to year 7 work if selective is your main goal. Better to focus on what you need now, and then the weak areas is what you improve on. Jaden was giving some information on how do you actually know if your kid is suited for OC and selective. And the best way is just to do tests. See how they go to mock examinations. We offer some, other companies offer some. Just get a good understanding of how weak is actually weak. Because sometimes we get parents and they say, oh, my son or my child is actually very bad at English, but they might be average. And even with an average English mark and a very high maths mark, your child can still make OC, still make selective. So I think the main thing to take here is do some tests, do some mock trial examinations, see where your child lies, get an overview of where they are collectively. But the main thing is you want to focus on the weaker area now. If you only focus on what he's good at, and maybe he's better at maths because he likes maths, if you continue to focus on that, that gap will be very, very big by the time they hit high school. And trying to supplement that and take it back, it's going to be pretty hard. But I might pass it to Dr. Trung if you want to share some insights as well.
Yes, I totally agree with what you said, Justin. Unfortunately, with respect to the selective school exam and the OC, it is a biased exam towards English. The maths component of the exam is extremely easy. With my 3 children, the first one was extremely, well, not extremely, he was good at mathematics, and his English was average, whereas the other 2, their maths ability wasn't as good as their older brother. However, the 2 younger ones made it to Sydney Grammar, whereas my older one failed the exam. So there is a bias towards English, and as Justin's pointed out, that you really need to focus on the English component because the maths component in the exam is extremely easy. However, I do have good news for you. The good news is that in high school, it's students who do well in maths tend to do well in the science subject, and they tend to do well in the HSC as well. So that's good news, but in the selective, you really need to focus on English, both reading and writing.
Thank you.
Perfect. Just with the interest of time, I know we're a bit over, so we might take this last question from Alyssa and then we'll wrap up after that. So Alyssa, did you want to ask your question?
Yes, thanks, Justin. It's been really informative. I've got 2 kids, one's in year 4, but my younger son, he's actually in year 2. Is there any way that I can start preparing him for this selective test?
Yeah, perfect. So what I might do is, Yolanda, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, so I think that in year 2, in order to make sure that he's a bit more challenged above and beyond the school curriculum and syllabus, because the selective is so online focused now, I think it would be really beneficial to help him become accustomed to online methods of work. So this is also the reason why we changed our homework from to an online platform, so that they can start getting used to online quizzing and testing from a young age, so that when they do sit the selective exam, it's not as daunting. I think it would also be good to start developing critical thinking skills from a young age. So things like what Justin mentioned before. If he's reading a novel, asking him about why he thinks something happened, or why he thinks something works a certain way, so that it is probing his critical thinking skills, analytical skills, which are all really important for the selective exam. And Amy already mentioned earlier, but reading widely is just so important. If he doesn't like reading now, getting them to start with something that interests them, or starting from a book that is related to a film or a movie or a character that he likes, is a good way to introduce them, or to help them become interested in reading, even if it's not something that they like to do at the moment.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing those tips.
Yeah, perfect. So I think we might wrap it up then. If anyone does have any more questions, feel free to just reply back to the email that we send you. You should be getting that sometime tomorrow, and then we can answer further questions there. So what's going to happen from now is, when you get that email, there will be a Google form for you to fill out. It will just ask you some questions, and then once you finish filling out that Google form, you'll get a link to the Thinking Skills toolkit, which we've created for you, as well as the full Thinking Skills exam and solutions. Like I said earlier during the talk, there's going to be a number of webinars. So we want to keep this going, keeping parents informed at every step of the way. So when it's school application time, we'll do a seminar or a webinar on how to choose the right schools. Or when it's maybe a month before the exam, we'll do a webinar on what to expect leading up to the exam, what you should do for your last month, what the exam day will look like. So we really just want to support all parents throughout this whole process, keep you updated, and then we can go from there. I saw a question in the chat on when the selective mock trial is going to be. So it's going to be mid-October. And again, more information about that will start being distributed to parents throughout the next couple of months. And for any new parents, if you do want to try out anything that we talked about today, feel free to do so. We're going to offer a free trial lesson. So come in risk-free, just see how we actually teach and see the theory notes and see if it's something good for your child. And if you don't like it, then you can just do a one-off and that is all sorted. So I know we're over time, so we'll wrap it up there. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for spending this night with us. I know that everyone's busy and everyone has lots of things going on, and it's also very cold and everyone's getting sick. So we really do appreciate you spending this time with us. Hopefully all the information that was presented in this talk was applicable to you and you actually benefited from it in some way, shape or form. We will have more webinars and we will take you through that process. This whole webinar will also be posted onto YouTube, and we will also share that link for you as well. So if you do want to rewatch anything or you want to take notes from any of the slides, feel free to. But what I'll do is we'll end the call there. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your time tonight with us. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.